Morning. Thanks for joining us all today. I am Sally, and this is my friend and business partner Kika. Together we run Gaia Wellbeing Collective. Our and second. Our intention for this morning is to guide you on an exploration of menopause and language. And by the end of the morning, our aim is to show you how the psychology of language influences our lived experience and offer some easy, actionable ways we can positively embrace our journey through menopause. Menopause isn't an ending, it's a pivotal transition that redefines who we are. Language, however, plays a really crucial role in shaping our experience. We will explore how Western culture negatively sets to have a rough ride. We propose a reframing of language and a reclaiming of our woman's power because words do have power. I want to share with you a little bit about how I landed on this topic. In 2018, I decided to head back to school and did a psychology degree. And a standout lecture from my studies was looking at the ability to shape perspectives, opinion, and experience with language. To give you an idea of what we were looking at, if we think about newspapers, every time we pick up a newspaper, dependent on the journalist who's written the story or who is in charge of the newspaper, there's generally an agenda, and it's what the reader is meant to think and feel, dependent on the language that the journalist will use. We could also think about if anyone's seen Derren Brown, any of his shows, he uses a technique called NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And this is how he uses prompts and language to help shape the behavior and outcomes. So giving the illusion of some kind of magical hypnotic powers. The lecture in question, when I was studying, centered on hostage situations, and in particular negotiators, and how they need to create a connection with the hostage taker, and for the hostage taker to feel like they relate. And language in this situation is quite important. And a really good example is taking the word talk. So negotiators will really avoid saying, let's talk, we need to talk, because the idea of talking leading to the expression talk is cheap, and giving the hostage taker the view that the negotiators may be disingenuous. So it's about using language that helps to bring about the end of the situation for the hostage taker to feel related and connected. So I guess you're kind of thinking, how does this connect with menopause?
Sorry, we are not sharing, are we?
Are we not sharing a screen?
Yeah.
Oh
no. Can you see our screen?
Oh, sorry, ladies, we've not been sharing our screen.
Straight into.
Yeah, it's okay. It's showing now.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so sorry, just taking off from there. So relating those examples that I gave to menopause, if we think about the language that is connected to menopause, I don't know, you can use the chat to put down some words that come to mind, but things like decline, brain fog, referred to as moody, maybe being a bit past it, and sort of decline sort of spring to mind. And if we think about a common thread with all of those words, it tends to be, it is quite negative. There's nothing inviting about the language that we use around menopause. So if we keep that common thread in mind, and then just if we can, there we go. And we look at Latin American culture and how they term menopause is the age of wisdom. So indigenous cultures viewing menopausal women as wisdom keepers and spiritual leaders. So the age of the grandmother. Or if we flip to India and look at Ayurvedic practice, menopause being associated with wisdom, introspection, detachment from worldly concerns, and spiritual liberation. And then my favorite is Japan and China. So the second spring, signifying renewal of energy and purpose. And comparing the two different linguistic approaches, just sort of reflect as to how that might alter our view of menopause. Okay. Right, just to help us understand and highlight a little bit more how language plays on us, we're going to play a couple of little games. And the first game is going to be a yes/no game. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend a couple of minutes, maybe just a minute, 2 minutes tops, saying yes, but pairing that with the head. And then we're going to move on to no. And when we say no, we're going to nod our head. When we're playing this little game, I want you to think of how that might feel within your body and your mind. Okay, so is everyone ready? You've got your mics on mute, so we're going to have a minute on yeses and then a minute on no's. Are you ready, guys? Ready? Okay, yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, 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 yes,
Yes.
yes. Let's take it to the nose. No, no, no,
No.
no,
No.
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 It's quite,
No.
it's that mismatch between the language and the bodily gesture that can feel quite conflicting and tense. So just hold it in your head, just maybe a word that you would use to describe how that made you feel. And then we can move on to the next game. With this game, we're going to try and immerse ourselves in a couple of stories. And I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and just listen to the words of the story and almost walk yourself through the story as if you were the character. And as we listen, try and sort of really notice how your body and your mind reacts and responds to the words. Okay, so I'm inviting you to close your eyes for a moment, ladies, as we listen. Okay, Anna paused at the doorway, her chest rising and falling in deep, steady breaths, a warm sense of anticipation tingling in her stomach. As she stepped inside, the room radiated with light and gentle energy, each laugh and murmur brushing over her like a soft, comforting breeze. Faces turned towards her with welcoming smiles that reached their eyes that sparkled with curiosity and care. Her shoulders unwound, her jaw relaxed, and a gentle warmth spread from her chest through her fingertips. One person's outstretched hand invited her in, and she felt a soft pull of belonging, as if the space itself opened to embrace her. The conversation flowed and hummed, full of encouraging tones, soft laughter, and affirming nods. Every word seemed to vibrate through her body, leaving a light, expansive feeling in her chest. She felt her spine lengthen and her hands release tension and her heart expand. By the end of the gathering, Anna felt energized, seen, and buoyant, as though she were floating lightly on air. Her body radiated confidence, warmth, and calm excitement, carrying her into the next moment with a sense of hope and possibility that hummed through every cell. Okay, so ladies, I quite like if you would just use our chat to write a few words down there. You could just tap into how your body and your mind felt as you were listening to that story. Oh, that's nice. Comfort and warm from Shirley. And if anyone else wants to pop down some words, they can. So that first story was quite a positive, quite visceral story that I was reading. So you've got calm from Aisha. So I felt like Cinderella at a ball. Amazing. Okay. Okay. Going to leave it there and I'm going to move on to the second story. So again, ladies, I want you to close your eyes and listen to the story as if you're walking the same steps as our main character and notice how the words land for you. So Anna froze at the doorway, her chest tightening with every shallow breath, a cold, sinking weight coiling in her stomach. The room felt sharp, unforgiving, and suffocating, each laugh and murmur cutting through her like icy shards, scraping against her nerves. Faces flicked towards her briefly, eyes glazing over with indifference or quiet judgment. Then quickly looked away. A wave of loneliness and tension raced down her spine, making her shoulders bunch and tremble. Her hands tingled and went clammy, as if the air itself had turned frosty. She hovered at the edge of the group, feeling trapped and exposed, her breath catching as if the space was shrinking around her. The conversation stumbled on, awkward and jagged, each word pressing heavily against her chest, making it hard to think or respond. Every attempt to join in met cool glances, clipped replies, or blank silence, leaving an ache in her limbs. Her body felt rigid, heavy, and brittle, as though she were crumbling inwards with every passing second. By the time she left, Anna felt drained and shrunken and frozen from head to toe, as though a dense, icy wall had sealed her off from the world. Her steps echoed with anxiety, self-doubt, and invisible weight. And even her heart felt trapped, thrumming against a cage of dread. The encounter left her fearful, powerless, and convinced that nothing good could follow. That's quite a different experience that Anna had. And I'm going to invite you again to just write into the chat what words that you would use to describe how that felt to listen to Anna's story. And it's in contrast to that positive sort of visceral experience she had in the beginning. Hey, Charlotte, felt alien to me. Yeah, it didn't sound nice at all, did it? Unhappiness, lost, agitated. Get some really good words coming out here. Fearful, anxious, and alone. Anyone else got a few words that they wanted to put in? Okay, I will move on. So both of these exercises are taken from psychological research papers, and they help illustrate the power of language. So technically what is happening is priming. And the Oxford Dictionary says that priming is the unconscious process where exposure to stimulus influences an individual's response to a subsequent related stimulus. So in the yes-no game, a simple mismatch of language and bodily gestures creates the tension within the body and the mind. We didn't really share in the chat our experience of that, but I know personally I find it very difficult to coordinate the different connections with the gesture and the language, and as a byproduct of that, it feels very uncomfortable inside my body. And with our stories of Anna, we can see that language cues can help shape a full-bodied experience, not just an abstract perception. And this is exactly what's happening when we listen to messages and words our culture uses to describe menopause. So if we think back to the language that we use in Western culture in comparison to our Mexican Latino counterparts, we're being negatively primed. And the Latinas or the Indian culture or China and Japanese culture are positively primed. And research shows that in cultures like Mexico, where women are positively primed, view menopause through a brighter and more optimistic lens. Furthermore, the physical effects of menopause are experienced differently, so with fewer reported symptoms and intensity. So it doesn't mean that women cross-culturally don't experience symptoms of menopause. It's just that how they experience them and the intensity of them is different. So language really does matter for lots and lots of different reasons. So if I take you back to our opening comment, Kika and myself, we're proposing a reframing of language, which helps us to reclaim our womanly power. And before I hand over to Kika, I want to share with you two of my favourite menopause facts that help me to reframe and empower my narrative. And I do this by looking at the reality rather than what I'm told. So if we think of brain fog, that classic, oh gosh, my brain is declining, feeling that we just can't think. Well, in actual fact, research shows that on average, women in menopause outperform age-matched men cognitively. And this is mainly attributed to men having a steeper decline as they age. So even though we notice that dip, we outperform in several cognitive tasks, including measures of processing speed and verbal memory. So when I have a moment when I don't remember what I should be doing, or my brain just goes to mush, I hold this in mind. The second fact is probably my absolute favourite, is to remind myself that I'm actually just like a teenager. Menopause is considered a significant but dynamic neurological transition, similarly to what you go through in puberty as a teenager. So even though we have cognitive changes, these are adaptive due to the processes that our brain is going through. There's actually a lot of scope for neuroplasticity, neural pruning and reshaping of the brain. So there's a lot going on that is positive for us, rather than the negative words and just sort of replacing that negative with the positive. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to hand over to Kika, who will guide us through some actionable ways we can bring some changes into our menopausal narrative.
Thank you, Sal. Yeah, so I'm Kika, and I'm gonna take over from now. And just for context, so I'm Sally's friend and business partner. And just for context, I'm postmenopausal, and I love talking about the menopause. Sally has explained to us how our menopause programming affects our lived experience of it. So what can we do with all this knowledge? Now that we know all of it, how can we truly embody menopause as the second spring? So first, what does embodiment even mean? In a simple sense, it's when an idea, a value, or a feeling becomes part of who we really are, so part of our core. And it shows up in our body through our posture, through movement, through present, and especially through our behavior. So many people associate embodiment with physical action or physicality, but in fact, it's more about the connection between the body and the mind. And so it's sending these ideas to our subconscious, to these deeper levels of ourselves, so that they become part of who we are. So I could go into a philosophical discussion about our subconscious, as I do believe that our subconscious is not only in the realm of the mind, as we were thought to believe, but instead I think that this subconscious is this connection between the body and the mind. But we don't have time for it. So I'll just say that to me, embodying the second spring means to unlearn the old programs, the old priming, as Sally called it, which is stored in our subconscious body and mind, and replace it with a new one. So how can we do that? So the first step is to start letting go of this old program. And what can we let go of? So what are the things that we should start sort of shedding and letting go of in this old programming, in this old priming? So I will invite you now to think of the first words that come to your mind when you think about menopause, and maybe also notice what feelings do they come with, and also maybe if you can drop them in the chat so we can have an idea of what we have. Stress, yeah, it's a good one. Any other words that come to mind when we think about the menopause? Things that we've experienced or things that we might be scared of experiencing in the future?
I find it foreboding, if I had to think of a word.
Yes, a bit of dread, change in all spheres of life. Yeah, I like change. Change is not negative, that there's not necessarily a negative connotation to it. But yeah, normally the words that people think of are, yeah, change, old, chaos, decline, loss, hot flushes, brain fog, the pause. So these are all the words that we normally, so we learn to associate with the menopause in many ways. So we are told before we experience anything that this is what we should expect. So what can we start, if you want to change this programming, what can we start calling instead? How can we replace that old priming, that old program with a new one? So instead of the change, renew. Instead of old, we can call it transformation. We are transitioning into this new phase. Instead of chaos, we can use recalibration, because our hormones are adapting to this new phase where our bodies don't need to prepare to bear a child on a monthly basis. We are not declining, we are evolving. Our brain is literally reshaping to adapt to the changes. Loss of fertility can be the birth of freedom to so many women. I personally had extremely painful menstrual bleeds all my life due to an undiagnosed endometriosis. And I also suffered from migraines every time I ovulated and every month during my menstrual bleed. So twice a month I had horrible migraines. And I'm happy to report that I'm free from pain since entering the menopause. And actually that is very common, that women that suffer from menstrual migraines stop once they go through the menopause. So there is a period of transformation, and we need to learn how to manage the symptoms that come with that. But this doesn't need to be as bad as we were thought to believe. So that is the message here. And I think once we start sort of repriming our brains and reprogramming our brains, we can experience these symptoms in a more positive way, in a different way. So Sally talked to us about the ability of our brains to adapt and just to reiterate it in a more embodiment context. When we repeat a phrase, whether positive or negative, our brain fires the same set of neurons again and again. So if we keep saying, I'm losing it, the brain will wire that expectation into our self-perception, which then shows up in our body as slumped posture or shallow breathing or tension. But if instead we choose a new phrase like I am in renewal, for instance, we then activate different circuits in the brain. We call up imagery of growth, expansion, possibility, and the body will respond accordingly. So the shoulders will open, the breath will deepen, the mood will lighten. And repetition strengthens that pathway until it becomes that more natural response, until it becomes truly embodied. So language doesn't just describe how we feel, but it also trains the brain and the body to embody that feeling. And by choosing more empowering language, we are taking advantages of these amazing things, which is this neuroplasticity of the brain. So we're teaching our nervous system to truly live inside the story of the second spring. And as I like to say, it's like taking a cup of self-love. So every time we do that, every time we use a more positive approach to this transition that we're going through, we are giving ourselves a little bit of self-love. So we talked a lot about words and how they prime our brains, but where do these words come from? There's this quote which I love, which is, watch your thoughts for they become words, watch your words for they become actions, watch your actions for they become habits, and watch your habits for they become your character, and watch your character for it becomes your destiny. So in a nutshell, the words we use come from the thoughts we think. So to embody new words, to change that mindset, we need to come a step back, because it's in fact our thoughts that will start shaping these words. And our thoughts come from many different places. So by changing our thoughts, by changing the way you think, we can then start changing our words. And by changing our words, we can then change the habits and eventually our lived experience of whatever it is. We're talking here about menopause, but that can be applied to anything in our lives. But if we bring it back to menopause as a second spring, if we start this process of changing how we think and then changing how we talk, we'll then start experiencing menopause in a different way. So how do we do it? So it's all good to know things in theory, but how can we bring it to practice? So that's what we need to do: practice, practice, practice. I personally don't like the concept of practice makes perfect, as I think that the search for perfection kills creativity, but practicing something certainly makes it permanent, whatever that is. So what practices can help us embody the menopause as the second spring? Mindfulness and meditation is a great start, and we can all do it despite the popular belief that meditation is hard. It doesn't need to be. We don't need to sit at the top of a mountain, cross-legged, feeling uncomfortable and trying to empty our minds, which at the best of times seems like an impossible task to most people. So meditation doesn't need to be about emptying our minds. It can be the simple act of noticing our thoughts. And we can do that anywhere and at any time, in the train, in the office, when we're cooking, any time really. You can just take a pick. And just that act of noticing alone will then detach you from your thoughts and any emotions attached to them, and then give you that space and the power to change them. And it's only when we have that space between us and our thoughts, because our thoughts are not who we are, we can then have that power to start changing how we think about something, and then subsequently how we refer to it and experience it. And when I say noticing, I mean noticing with curiosity. So not judgment. We don't need to put a judgment on our thoughts, because that sort of defeats the point. But it's just noticing with true curiosity. So what does it look like? What am I thinking? Where is this thought coming from? And how does it make me feel? So just have curiosity about it and just notice it. And just by doing that, just by noticing again and again and again, it will then allow you to start changing those more negative thoughts, that negative prime and that negative program, and then you can then start calling in those more positive ways of referring to menopause. Journaling is another incredibly useful and effective practice. It allows us to process and understand our thoughts a bit better. And it will also give you that distance from your thoughts and those emotions that are attached to them. So again, it will give you that space to give you the power to change. So I would invite you to set an intention to write about your experience, your fears, your hopes of this next stage in your lives. And again, if you are committed to do it, it will eventually lead to change. So you start seeing change once your thoughts become processed and you can look at them on a piece of paper. You can then have that power to start changing how you think and so on. And finally, affirmations. I'm personally not a big fan of using affirmations alone as a way to embody something, as I think that affirmations are too much in the realm of the mind. But if we combine them with other practices, they can be quite helpful, actually. So things like I'm in renewal, this is my second spring, I embody wisdom, freedom, and vitality. My body is recalibrating, I'm blooming into my fullest self. Each day I grow stronger. So things like that, whatever you choose, I would invite you to choose that phrase that feels really true to you, because I think you need to have that sort of it needs to resonate with you. So it needs to feel true to you for that to work. So choose one phrase that feels true for you, and then try and repeat it daily. Maybe put it around your house in stick notes. Talk to yourself in the mirror while walking, or maybe just quietly in your mind. That also works. And the more you repeat those words, the more they become your embodied reality. And I would also invite you to feel this affirmation. So when you repeat them to yourself, just try and feel them in your body to help them stick. And also, I think, and very, very importantly, share your affirmations with others. Share them with your partners, with your kids, with your friends, with your neighbors, with your colleagues. Because when we speak it out loud to others, language then spreads. And when we share those empowering words, we are not just rewiring our own brain, but we're also helping to reshape the collective story of menopause. And by doing that, it will not only become more embodied and more part of who you are, but you also changing the narrative in other people's minds, which is a great service for others. So there are other practices that might not relate directly to embodying the concept of menopause as the second spring, but they can help indirectly as they sort of underpin our mental and physical health. We all know how beneficial it is, so I'm not going to try to sell it, but just a reminder that movement and time in nature are more effective than antidepressants to make us happy. So get out there, move. Moving is also a type of meditation. It brings us to the present moment. It brings us to out of our minds and into our bodies. And actually, I'm going to add a little story I heard the other day, which I really loved. So there's been some research that showed that birds singing help trees to open their stomata, which is effectively their pores, so that they can retrieve more nutrients and water from the soil. So just by being in nature, there's so much synergy that happens. And we also know there's plenty of research that shows that it also has a huge physiological and psychological impact on us. So get out there. And finally, find community. Find like-minded people that will give you that sense of belonging. And belonging is such a primal need, and we don't have the village anymore. So we need to actively get out there and look for it. And I think community is very important because it's where this new language can then become your lived experience. Once we start sharing all these new concepts, once we start embodying it and sharing it with others, it then becomes the lived experience that we need to then really experience menopause as the second spring. So I want to finish with a little whale tale. Does anyone know what whales can teach us about menopause? You're muted, so I won't know if you do know or not. But it's something really, really lovely. So humans and whales, and some species of whales, not all species, or at least it's some species that have been studied. So we are the only mammals, so us and whales, that are known to experience menopause. And when scientists studied whale pods, they discovered something fascinating, so super fascinating. So once the females stop reproducing, they don't become irrelevant. Sometimes they live another 40 years after their reproductive years, which is very similar to us. So once they stop reproducing, they don't become irrelevant, they become leaders. So they guide the pod, they share memory of feeding grounds, they keep the group alive through their wisdom, and they become this like very, very important members of the pod, much more important than when they were in their reproductive years. And what this research showed us is that the menopausal whales become even more relevant as leaders when times are tough and food stocks are at their lowest, which is what it shows in this picture here. So on the top, they are still important as leaders when there is a high stock of salmon, which is what they feed on. And at the bottom, when stocks go down, they have to step up to help the pod. So I think that that's amazing. And I love it because it reminds us that menopause is not about decline, contrary to what we were taught to believe. And it is about stepping into this new role as guides, as carriers of knowledge, as anchors for our communities. And just like the whales, this is our second spring. It is a time to lead, to nurture, and to live from our wisdom. And it's not only the whales that teach us this. There's so many ancient cultures, some that Sally has mentioned, but so many others that also saw menopause as this time when women stepped into their power, either as elders, as wisdom keepers, as leaders for the community. So I'll invite us all to reclaim menopause as the beginning of our leadership years and our second spring. Yeah, so I think that that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening, and we open for questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Sally and Kika. While you're thinking about your questions, I thought I would ask a quick question. You've covered a lot of issues here today. If there's one piece of advice or one takeaway from this, what would it be?
I I think the thing that I'd like people to take away from this is the idea and thought that we can influence our own experiences of this, that we have power and control and autonomy over how we experience menopause, and that I think is quite a liberating and empowering notion, to know that through practice of various different practices, mindfulness, meditation, just the simple fact of replacing some of the negative words with new kind of words. For me, it's the sacred pause. I'm approaching menopause, and I work one to one with a lot of women who are in perimenopause or have gone through, and some of their negative talk has definitely given me the idea of foreboding and wanting to sort of delve into this to make sure that my experience is as pleasant as possible, which has then led me to looking at language and so forth, and yeah, so having this control over how we experience things, I think, is the main thing that I would like people to take away. I don't know if Kika, if you have another thought with that as well.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. I think we talked about a lot, and it's a big thing to try and change something that is so embedded in our subconscious mind and in our culture in general. So it's not a small task. But I think my advice would be start small. Whatever change you decide to do, if you learned anything here from today, if you are enthusiastic about making a change of how you approach this phase of our lives, I think my advice would be pick something that really works for you. There are many different ways that we can do it, but pick something that really works for you, and start small and make one little change. And then once you make that little change, you might start feeling slightly better, and you might say, "Oh, that worked. I can feel it." So that will then propel you to make another little change. And yeah, so I think so it's not an overwhelming task, and it can be effective in little chunks. So pick something that works and keep it small, and yeah, I think over time we can. I do believe that we can. We have this ability if we start small, and if we start speaking to other women about our experience in a different way. We have the power to change it, and I think that that can be really huge. We can like influence how we experience something that was I was told from a very early age would be a horrible phase in my life, and it isn't. It really isn't. I'm not saying that it doesn't come with its own things that need to be looked at and managed, but it's not the end. It really, for me, my experience showed me that it is the beginning on so many levels. So I think that if we start small with ourselves and spread the word out there of our own experience, we can then have a huge impact on a cultural level, hopefully at some day. So maybe the girls that are growing up today can grow up in a world where they will not dread and experience this time in their lives as so many other people did, in my opinion, unnecessarily. So yeah, in a nutshell, is start small.
Well, thank you, Mason, for your comment there.
Thank you. Woman power,
Yeah.
yes, together we're definitely
You
stronger.
As Kika was talking there, I kept seeing an image in my head of standing at a pool or a pond and just throwing one little stone in and just sort of having the ripples that go outwards, and that starting small with just throwing one little stone in, and how that can permeate outwards is, yeah, it's a nice image.
Nice.
Are there any more questions from people?
Yes, perhaps more a reflection than a question, but perhaps one that we can comment on, or that the speakers could comment on, is sometimes acknowledging the change, and sometimes it's not always a positive thing. Sometimes the hot flushes are difficult to deal with, and I don't necessarily think that that's always a bad thing. It's okay to actually acknowledge a negative as well as a positive. So I think even within this discussion about being positive and reframing and sort of noticing the priming, I think it's been really helpful. So thank you. But I think it's also okay to sometimes say, okay, don't feel so good today, and just being okay with that and holding that, and otherwise it becomes quite tedious to constantly seek the positive in every situation. I think there needs to be a balance. I don't know, but perhaps you can comment on how you manage that transition.
I absolutely agree with you 100% on that. I think it can be detrimental on so many levels to just only try and keep yourself in this positive frame of mind, and it's maybe I didn't sort of emphasize enough, but the idea that it's not to ignore the fact that some of the things that we will go through can be quite intense at times, and you'll have days where you don't feel as great, but it's to try and harness some of the tools that we can use, like journaling and meditation and mindfulness, in order to get a balance where we're not experiencing negative all the time. We've got that nice kind of, like, most of it's positive, but we've got some of those days, and when we have those days, it's okay. Like, sometimes that's what our body needs, and we need to climb underneath the duvet, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, no, by all means, you are absolutely right, and I think I should have stressed there more. Managing symptoms of this transition is inevitable. We need to find ways to manage those symptoms. We need to have a space to talk about them. We need to have a space to feel them and be held by others. By all means, that is right. And I apologize if that was not as clear as it should have been. But I think this being positive about, it's not being positive about it all the time. It's just having that, like, it's changing the priming of it, the program of it, so that when we go through those symptoms, when we go through those difficult periods, they will still be hard, but they will be easier than they are at the moment. So it's just like giving that space to approach those difficult moments in a more in a different way. Like, it's not even in a positive way, but in a more prepared way. And as research showed, that Sally mentioned, when we have that priming and that initial programming changed, the way we experience those symptoms change. So we're still going to be experiencing them, and we still need a space for and that's, I think that's when community comes into like beautifully, to having other women to talk to you about how you feel and hold you at those difficult times and share their experiences with you can be extremely helpful. But I do think that is not about pretending that nothing is going on. It's just like looking at it from a slightly different angle so that we can experience it in a different way, because this, what is in here will affect how this reacts to it. So that was.
I think it's you know, interestingly, going through the perimenopause. I'm not quite there yet, although I can see changes, you know, sort of moving in that direction. I think in my experience to date, it's a very community experience, which kind of shocked me initially, I think, just because it has such an impact on relationships. You know, it's and so it's actually a community experience. And sometimes I don't always notice it. Sometimes my husband would say, "Oh, you know, where are you in your cycle?" You know, just because sometimes the busyness of life can sometimes just, you know, mean that, oh yes, you know, I haven't quite had that period yet, or whatever, you know, or where am I? Anyway, so I think in my experience, actually, it's more communal than personal, which is quite a shocking revelation, I think, or quite an interesting sort of insight into the whole process. And I think also, you know, with more and more menopause is becoming a hot topic in a work situation, because it's, you know, the impact it has on our working lives, our working styles, our team dynamic. So
And it's not only the menopause, is our cycles as well. Like our cycles, a woman go through a cycle every month, and that has been completely ignored in the workplace. And now it's slowly starting to be acknowledged, which is beautiful. And I think it's the same with menopause. And I just would like, I saw this comparison with a menopausal mom and a teenage child, and it's the same. And we it's like looking at teenage years as this period of transformation, and it's hard for parents to have teenage children, and it's hard going through the menopause, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not the end of anything. It's just the beginning of something new. And I think that is what the message is here. It's not like you can have a problem-free menopause. No, but this is just a transition into a new period where a lot of other good things will happen and come to you as well. So it's just, and transitioning is normally, you know, is it can be like, there's movement and there is change. So there's going to be an imbalance, and then things need to balance again. So
for sure. Thank you.
Just shared a comment. I just wanted to, don't know if everyone's seen. So she said her sister really likes the hot flushes and hopes that it doesn't stop once she's postmenopausal. As she says, it keeps her warm in the winter months. Talk about being positive.
Thank you for sharing, Aisha. She's gone.
Okay, thank you, Leanne, for your comments. I'd also like to thank Kika and Sally once again for your very informative presentation. This will be on our YouTube channel in about 2 weeks' time. And so you'll be able to access it further if you wish. This is part of a series. There'll be another presentation next month, and there are a number of resources on our website that you can access. And of course, if you go onto the Future Communities YouTube channel, you'll be able to access all the previous presentations and this one as well. So we hope if you have a need of any resources or extra information, you can go to that. And of course, you can contact Sally and Kika. Either you put your links on there, have you?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Bear with us 1 minute.
Yeah, if you want to put your links in there, or if anybody else who's watching this either now or at a future time, then you can contact them via Future Communities. Just send us a message or an email.
We're just gonna put the link there now. Just 1 second.
Here we go.
Sorry.
Don't get any hot flushes.
We should, we should have been more prepared. Sorry, my computer's gone slow now. One minute. There you go.
We got there in the end.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, we've now reached midday, so it's the end of the presentation. I hope everybody found it useful. So there's other resources you can access as part of this program. I'd like to thank Sally and Kiko once again for your for the presentation that you've just made. And maybe you should make one for men, educating them about these issues. I think that might be very, very useful.
Yeah, I agree.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank
And
you
I'm
for
going to stop
having
the
us.
recording now.